meat. Where is this? I had it right here. Here it is. If you remember last time we were learning about what if you salted milk and meat together? Salted. It's forbidden to boil milk and meat together. Forbidden to boil. But it's forbidden from the rabbis also to eat milk and meat together, even if they weren't boiled together. But what about eating meat separately and milk separately? No problem. What's the problem? Right? Yeah, it says you have to wait after. But what if the milk had the taste of meat in it? Or the meat had the taste of milk in it? Now what do? It says, well, I mean, obviously, if it has the taste in it, too much taste, it must be forbidden. I mean, you're not even allowed to eat milk after meat because you still have the taste of meat in your mouth. What if you have a piece of meat that has the taste of milk inside of it? How? Not that you boiled it. If you boiled it, for sure it's forbidden. But what if, let's say, you soaked them together? We'll talk about soaking later. What if you salted them together? Salt takes the taste from one and puts it into the other. So if you salted them together, that's called hot. So let's try to do all of law number hay again. Hello, I don't hear you. Good, let's go. Hey, law number here. We are now on the laws of milk and meat in Yoredeya, chapter Tzaddik Aleph, which in English means 91. Chapter Tzaddik Aleph. We went through the first chapters. The laws of milk and meat start in chapter 87, Pei Zion. And we learn what types of milk and what types of meat and what constitutes cooking from the Torah, what constitutes cooking from the rabbis. We learned that you're not supposed to eat milk after meat. In some cases, you're not even allowed to eat meat after milk if it's cheese. And we learned the laws of what's the law of milk that's found in the stomach of a cow, of a calf. Is that considered to be real milk or not? And we learned what's the law of eggs found inside of a chicken. Is that considered to be meat or not? Even though chicken meat is only forbidden from the rabbis with milk. We learned all those things, very interesting. And now we're learning, what about if two pieces touch each other? Milk and meat touch each other. We said we have to wash it off. What if you salt them together? You put salt on the milk, salt on the meat. So let's look and see, hey, right, we learned this before, but let's look at it again. Law number hey, right? Chapter Siman Tzaddik Aleph, chapter 91, Seif hey, law number 5. Maliach, something that is so salted, that is so salted that you can't eat it because it's so salty. Hainu ka'ain maliach shemochim lakadera, like the amount of salt you have to put on a meat in order to take out the blood so that you can boil it, which means a thin layer of salt all over the meat. If your piece of meat is salted that much, v'shah kadei malicha, and it waited 18 minutes, then calls a manchaloidicho. After that 18 minutes, says the machaber, all the time that you did not wash it off, after 18 minutes, it is called eno nechol machmas molcho. It's called that it is inedible because of its salting, and it's considered to be hot. And if in that time touches milk to that meat after 18 minutes, you put salt on it after 18 minutes, then it's hot, and the meat becomes forbidden from the milk. We'll learn that it only becomes forbidden kadei klipo. We'll see. Unless the meat is fatty. Says the Ramah exactly the opposite. After 18 minutes, it becomes hot. Says the Ramah, some people say that after it waits the shir malicha, after it waits the time of malicha, 18 minutes, lo mikra, it's not called afterwards roteach. Where do we get this idea of 18 minutes with it? When we'll learn, God willing, the laws of salting meat. The minimum amount of time that you can salt meat in order to take the blood out of the meat is 18 minutes. Less than 18 minutes doesn't count. It's like you didn't salt it at all. So you want to boil a piece of meat, you have to get the blood out of it. There's two ways of getting the blood out of the meat. Either you roast it, the fire takes it out, or you put salt on it. How long do you have to roast it for? It says until it turns brown a little bit on both sides. How long do you have to put salt on it? Minimum 18 minutes. You're supposed to put on longer. Minimum 18 minutes. So it says that 18 minutes, that's the time that it takes meat that meat is hot, it's boiling. Says Machaber, we have an argument between the Machaber, the Beit Yosef, and the Ramah. The Machaber says that after 18 minutes, that's when it starts to get hot. And the Ramah says after 18 minutes, it's not hot anymore, only within the 18 minutes. L'tzorech gadol, and if a person has a big necessity, like a hesed meruba, and it's also tzorech sudat mitzvah, if you're going to lose a lot of money by saying that meat is still boiling, if you're going to lose a lot of money by saying that meat is still boiling after 18 minutes, you're going to lose a lot of money, then you can rely on this opinion and say that after 18 minutes is nothing. But if there's not a big loss or whatever, then ein lahakal kolal, don't be lenient. Immediately when you put that salt on the meat, forever it's considered to be hot. And if milk falls on salted meat, then it makes that meat forbidden. Even if you didn't salt the meat on both sides, only on one side, all the time that the melech nimlach, as long as it's so salted that you cannot eat it, machmas molcho, it's considered to be boiling. But if you didn't salt the meat so much, you just put a little bit of salt, then it is called tsonin. It's called cold, even if you salted it on both sides. Right? Wrong. Some people say, yesh omrim, that we are not baki, we are not expert what it means to be salted, covered with salt so much that it's boiling. Yesh lanu lachshav afilu malichas tzli kroteach. Salting for roasting, all you have to do is put a little bit of salt on it. You don't even have to salt it at all for roasting. So they put a little bit of salt on the roasting. We'll learn that later on. Tzaddik Gimel will learn. Put a little bit of salt on the meat in order to roast it. So far we have two levels of salting. We're going to get a third level in a second. Salting, which is salted so much that it's inedible. That's considered to be boiling. Then we have salting, which is for roasting. When you roast meat, you put a little bit of salt on it. That's not so hot. That's not considered to be heat. Says the Ramah, yes, some people are severe with that even. A little bit of salt. And now we're going to learn the third level of salting. Tov l'hachmer, says the Ramah, it's good to be machmer, even if you have a little tiny bit of salt on your meat and there falls milk on it. Anytime, unless there's a big loss, be machmer. Say, I'm not going to eat it, which I think most people would do, right? If you have a piece of meat and there's salt on it, and there's a little bit of milk falls on it, and you say, oh, it's no problem, just wash it off. Someone says, but the Ramah says that that's forbidden. So a person who has fear of God will say, oh yeah, really, the Ramah says it's forbidden. Say, well, okay, I won't eat it. But if it's a big loss, right, your wife says to you, hey, that's a $50 steak. Come on, you're just going to throw the thing away for nothing? Say, yeah, I guess she's sort of right also. So, okay, what am I supposed to do? So it depends. It depends. If you think that the loss is big enough that you can say, hey, you know what, the Ramah says that if it's a big loss, it's permissible. Even the Ramah himself would eat it. So then you can eat it. But if you say, no, it's not such a big loss that I throw away the steak. I don't like steak so much anyway, or whatever, forbidden. Now there's a third level of salting. Maliach ka'ayin maliach the boila la'orcha. What if you salt meat in order to make it as what's called beef jerky? It used to be a long time ago that they used to, now we have LL, you have flights, take a few hours. It used to be in order to go from here to America, wherever they go, it would take weeks. What did they eat all that time? Right? What did they eat? They couldn't bring cows and sheep and slaughter them on the way. Right? That's usually what a person would do. You want fresh meat. You have a chicken, you have a cow, you have a sheep, and you slaughter it, and you eat the meat. That way the meat is preserved. How? Because the animal is alive. And it's alive, so it preserves the meat because it's alive. What if you want to, though, travel a long distance? You can't take your sheep with you or a cow with you. What? So what are you going to take? So what they would do is they would slaughter the chicken, they would slaughter the beef or whatever, and they would put a lot of salt on it. And the salt would preserve it. And then when they wanted to eat it, they would wash it off. They would wash off the salt or whatever they would do. Right? Okay, now what if you have this salt, it's called maliach la'orcha. It's salting for a journey. Then the law is like this: afilu la'achar she'adiach, even after you wash the meat off, it is still considered to be boiling hot. And the way that the Shulchan Aruch calls this boiling hot is eino nechal machmas malcho. It is not edible because of the salt. If a piece of meat is not edible because of it's salted, then that's considered to be chemically hot. And if milk falls on it, it's forbidden. So if you salted your meat for, let's say, just for a thin layer of salt, in order to take out the blood, or that much salt like to take off the blood, and you wash it off, that's it. Then this meat is not hot anymore. But if you salted that piece of meat so much that you needed to make like beef jerky, and you want it for a journey, then even after you wash it off, it's still considered to be hot. How do you get rid of this heat? You have to soak it in water. All the time you don't soak it in water, it is like boiling hot, and it becomes usher. How much does it become usher? Kadei klipa. We're going to learn in a moment, meat that is lean, salting only makes it forbidden. Kadei klipa. If lean cheese, most cheese is lean, and lean meat, both salted touch each other, then salting only has the power to make something usher, forbidden kadei klipa. What is kadei klipa? A shell. What is a shell? Like we learned before, if you could take a razor and cut off the thinnest layer you could that it would still hold together, that's called kadei klipa. That's how much salting makes forbidden, unless the pieces are fatty. We'll talk about that. Salting only makes forbidden kadei klipa. There is no difference between maliach elyon, whether the top one is hot, but tafel tachton, and the bottom one is tafel, means unsalted. Tafel, unsalted. Doesn't make any difference if the top one is salted or the bottom one is salted. The maliach tachton, or the bottom one is salted. We don't say the same thing as we do by heat. Do you remember we learned by heat, tatoa gover? Do you remember that we learned that law? The bottom one is hot, then we consider everything to be hot. If the bottom one is cold, then we consider everything to be cold. Do you remember we learned that law? It was right in the beginning of this, in this Tzaddik Aleph, we learned over here. Tatoa gover, the bottom one determines the heat. If you have a piece of cheese and meat, right, and one of them is hot, and they touch each other, then it's a big difference. If the bottom one, what is the bottom one? If the bottom one is cold, then they're both considered to be cold. The bottom one is cold and the top one is hot, then the bottom one cools off the top one. If the bottom one is hot, then it makes them both hot. It says, well, that only works with regular heat, but if it's salting, it doesn't work. Salting, it makes no difference. It's if on the bottom or it's on the top. The salted one is on the bottom. We say that both of them are forbidden. It says, there's no difference if the top one is salted and the bottom one is tafel, unsalted, or the bottom one is salted, and the tafel, tachton, I'm sorry, the maliach tachton, or the bottom one is salted and the upper one is unsalted. It makes no difference. In every case, the one that is salted spits out into the other one, and it doesn't swallow up from it. Therefore, meat and cheese that are salted, that touch each other, you have to take the klipa from both of them. If one is salted and the other one is not, and the salted one spits out. Let's say, for instance, the meat is salted, so it spits out into the milk and makes the milk forbidden, but the meat is not forbidden. Sheni tafel, hamaluach motor. The salted one only spits out; it does not take in. Ubahadachas mutar bahadacha, and the bottom one is permissible just by washing it off, because in the end the meat did touch milk. The tafel has to have klipa. All right. Here we have several interesting laws, and we don't have much time, so let's just try to do it. The Ramah says there. Let's go down. You have the Ber Heitev over there. There was the. You don't have the text. It used to be that somebody put up the text. No, Chaim Mir, you don't have the text over there. You used to have the text with the Ber Heitev. Okay, let's just look. We talked about this last time, and I'll talk about it again. What do we say? Salt only has the power to make something forbidden, kadei klipa. Salt makes things forbidden only kadei klipa, that's all. Unless the meat is fatty. The Machaber says even if one of them is fatty, then both of them are forbidden. Unless one of them is fatty. If it's fatty, then fatty meat has the power to make the other one forbidden up to 60. If it's fatty. If it's lean, then only kadei klipa. Let's look at the Ramah. Yesh omrim, some people say, the bakal malicha anu misharim b'samach. Some people say that anytime two pieces are salted, we are not bucky, we are not expert, and we cannot determine what is fatty and not. Therefore, anytime you have salting, it's always forbidden 60. Look later on, Siman Kuf Hey, that's the laws of Taruvot. Ketzad Noagim, what is the custom? And let's just finish this Raman, and then we'll go on. The tar, maluach, that what we said, that if one of them is salted and the other one is unsalted, it's okay. Here he just takes for an example. Here we're talking about milk and meat, but he takes for a better example. You have a piece, this refers to everything. You have a piece of pork and you have a piece of kosher meat, and you salted the kosher meat and it touched the pork. What's the law? So we said a piece that is salted, it only spits out and doesn't take anything in. The kosher piece of meat, because it's the only one salted, the pork is not salted, therefore the kosher meat spits out and it doesn't take in. So that's what he says. V'ha the tahor maluach v'tamei tafel. That what we said, that if the permissible piece of meat is salted and the forbidden piece is unsalted, shari, it's permissible. When? Shahatame yavish. When do we say that? Let's take our case. You have kosher salted meat, put it next to pork, that the kosher meat is totally permissible. It just spits out. When is this? If the pork, the forbidden meat, is dry. Aval imu davar salul, but if it happens to be a liquid, if it was clam chowder or something like that you put it next to, then the piece of kosher meat, even though it is salted and it's spitting out, it becomes forbidden. Because it's not eaten, because it's so salty, so it's like a piece of milk falls on meat, even though it's liquidy and the milk is not salted at all, but it falls on salted meat, it makes the whole thing forbidden. Bolea, it will swallow up the isser that comes, and both of them will be forbidden. But it has to be that the Torah lachkatzad, it has to be that this kosher meat, when does it become forbidden from the juice that falls on it? Even though the kosher meat is the only one salted, the kosher meat has to be also a little bit damp. But if it's dry, totally dry, then it doesn't activate the salt at all that's on it. And therefore it will not swallow from something that's right next to it. Okay, when you learn the laws of basar v'chalav, and you want to become a rabbi, you'll go over these laws. We'll talk about it more. Now we're going to get now Next, we're going to get to the laws of fat pieces. We learned that last time. We learned it. If the pieces are fat, then we don't say this law of only kadei klipa. Even insulting becomes totally forbidden, but we're going to learn that, God willing, tomorrow. Thank you very much.